Welcome back and welcome to my final Oscars week video. Today I am going to be talking about Best Picture nominations. So that is the films in the Best Picture category, Best Documentary, Best International Feature Film and Best Animated Film. So might be a little bit of a long one, so you might want to go and get yourself a quick cuppa. And I will leave my Oscars week playlist linked up here in case you have missed me talking about any of the other categories, or in case you're watching this out of order. All my other Oscars week videos are linked up there, including I popped in some of my reviews of some of these films that I'm going to be talking about as well, because obviously a lot of these that I watched during the run up to today, the big day, were re-watches for me. So most of these Best Picture nominations I have seen more than once. I will also leave you some timestamps in the description box in case you only want to hear me talk about the Best Picture nominees or the Best Documentary nominees. So we'll start off with Best International Feature Film, because this is the category where I haven't been able to see one of the films. One of the films has just evaded me completely. I have tried and I just don't seem to be able to find it at all. So Corpus Christi is the one that I haven't seen. I can't seem to find it anywhere to buy or rent or watch in the cinema or anything, so I will not be weighing in on that one. Obviously in this category we have Honeyland, which is also in the documentary feature category. We have Les Miserables, we have Pain and Glory, which is also in the actor in a leading role category, and then we have Parasite, which is in the Best Picture, Best Director, etc. categories. We know how well Parasite is doing. So in terms of the international feature film category, I would say that quite a safe bet on this one would be Parasite. It is my pick and it is my prediction. I really enjoyed it as a film. It felt like a really good twisty thriller novel. I enjoyed the setting. I enjoyed the way it was edited and put together, and it was just a good film. And as of filming this, I have seen it twice, and I would recommend giving it a watch. If you haven't already watched it, you might think, oh, it looks like a horror film, or it looks like I can't do a film with subtitles. But you know, like any film with subtitles, you kind of forget that they're there after a while and they just become part of the feature. But yeah, my pick and my prediction for this one would definitely be Parasite. In terms of the other films, Honeyland, as I say, was nominated in the Best Documentary category as well. I saw trailers for this when I was at one of the independent cinemas that I go to, and liked the look of it. But I think it's one of those films where most of the highlights are in the trailers. It didn't say an awful lot to me. And it's interesting that it's a documentary that's been nominated in the international feature film category. That intrigues me a little bit as well, the fact that it's made it into there. I don't think I've seen that before, but then I've only been following the Oscars in recent years, so it's probably happened before. Then Les Miserables I talk about in last week's movie reviews video, so I will leave that linked up here if you haven't seen it already. It is a new adaptation of Victor Hugo's novel. It's set where he wrote his novel and they make reference to it in the film. It is nothing like the musical or the film that we had released a few years ago with Hugh Jackman and everybody else that was in it. Just everybody was in that film. It's very dark, very depressing, very intense. I heard so many people describe it as intense as I was leaving the theatre. It's intense because it basically takes place over a day and a half, 2 days maximum. We don't even see the end of the second day. So it really, really is intense. There's a lot of violence, a lot of swearing, a lot of shocking things that take place. And I think that reflects the nature and the mood of the original novel, and that's what they wanted to do. But for me, it's not really the kind of film I would choose to go and see at the cinema, and it's not the kind of film I would choose to rewatch. And then Pain and Glory, I enjoyed Pain and Glory. It's one of those very quiet, very slow films. There's a good amount about the kind of opioid epidemic in a way in this film, and there's also, it also touches on what it's like to be kind of closeted in the movie industry, but all of this obviously takes place in Spain. No, not in Spain. Yes, in Spain. And then we have characters from who kind of move around as well, and so it's interesting seeing how that is handled in a different country and in a different culture, and I enjoyed it. I, you know, watched it all the way through. I think Penelope Cruz was really interesting in it, and I don't think she's talked about enough, but for me it wasn't kind of a blow me away big film, but that would probably be my runner-up for pick in this category. But I think, as I say, this category is quite a safe one. So moving on, we have the documentary features, and I've already talked about one of them, and that is Honeyland. This is set in North Macedonia, or Macedonia as it used to be called, and follows a woman who keeps bees in this really interesting way, and harvests their honey and sells their honey and basically lives off of that. You see her, you know, harvesting the honey, you see her selling the honey, you see her discussing the honey with other people, and then we have these kind of neighbours from hell that move in and threaten her livelihood, and she lives with her mother, and it's interesting watching her life go by, but it's nothing groundbreaking, and it kind of struggled to keep my attention at points, I would say. Then we have American Factory, which is about using one of the former General Motors factories in, I want to say it's in Detroit, I think it's in Detroit, but it's bought by a Chinese company, and they kind of make it over but use a lot of the existing structures and a lot of the existing machines to make stuff for their motor company. And we have a lot of the people who were employed there before go and work there, and other people in the community go and work there. I don't think it is Detroit. I think it's somewhere else near Detroit. I should have looked this up. You can see it was so memorable, can't you? It was interesting. It was interesting that the manufacturing company allowed this film to be made, because they do come across in quite a bad light. You know, they come across not a very positive way, that isn't out for their employees' interests and doesn't really care about health and safety. And there's a lot of talk of forming a union, and people vote for forming a union, and people get to those who might vote to form a union. And it just shows how they're trying to bring in ways of working that would work in their China manufacturing plants, and how they just fail to work when they bring them over here. It was interesting, definitely. And yeah, a lot of it is surprising that the company allowed this to be shown on film. That was really interesting. Then we have The Cave, which is set in Syria, and is set around a hospital that's set up underground, effectively in a cave. They have a cave where they can take people when air raids are taking place and bombs are going off, and the manager of this hospital is a woman, and so it's from her point of view. But for me, this film covered too much similar ground to another film on this list, For Sama, which is my pick and my prediction, because this takes place in Aleppo in Syria during the siege of Aleppo, and is set in a hospital, and the woman narrating it is narrating it as a letter to her baby daughter Sama, and saying that they are doing all of this for her so that she can have a better future, because she is born during the siege, and her father is a doctor in a hospital that he kind of basically set up with a lot of other student doctors and nurses, and we see the population of the hospital and the doctors slowly dwindle as they are killed from air raids and shells going off, and you know, their buildings and their lives being completely destroyed. And this one was an amazing piece of film because we have the filmmaker filming the entire thing from the kind of first showings of a like rebel rising revolution type of thing to them being pushed and pushed into smaller and smaller spaces. And it's literally, you know, some of it is filmed on a phone, a lot of it is filmed on a camera, but it's all her footage from the inside. We see what's going on and we see the emotion of it, and we see it from them as a family, from their point of view, him as a doctor and her as somebody that can also help people. And they have another family who is very close to them, and we see what they go through. And as food gradually becomes more and more scarce, and education and resources gradually become more and more scarce, you know, when the water's turned off, when there's no electricity because the place next door has been completely bombed, so it's cut off their electricity. It's such an emotional film, and it's so well edited and put together, and it's amazing that we have all of this footage. And whilst, you know, it did make me cry and really affect me, I had to kind of go away and watch something happy afterwards. It's a really, really good film, and I really recommend it, and it's my pick and my prediction in this category. And then one more film I didn't talk about, The Edge of Democracy. This is set in Brazil during the time when we have one president being impeached, and the former president and the person the current president has picked to take over, being imprisoned in Brazil, in this, you know, place where they supposedly have this democracy after having lived in military rule for so long. And again, this is a really interesting piece of film because the filmmaker has so much access to stuff that news cameras and other filmmakers wouldn't have, because she has certain connections through her family. Her family were very much kind of rebels and were imprisoned, and the current president again went through all that and was imprisoned, and so she has access to a lot of other people. And so I feel like we get to see a lot more in this film of the whole process than we would have done had it been somebody else filming this. And she kind of narrates it as she goes as well, which is really interesting. A lot of it is very shocking, and she says herself it plays out like some kind of true crime drama documentary, and it really does. It's shocking, all the things that happen. I didn't know about all these things happening, and I feel like we got a lot more coverage because she was very much on the inside than we would have done if we were just following the coverage on the news over here, back in the UK, wherever. And yeah, this was really good, and I feel like I learned a lot from all of these documentaries, and I feel bad that I didn't know enough about a lot of these things, but this one in particular, I'm like, I didn't know all this was going on. It's really, really interesting. And again, this one I think was really well put together, and was a good length for what it was as well. And obviously, because it's a kind of ongoing thing, we don't have a satisfying ending to it, whereas some of the others we've got a, oh, and here they are now kind of thing. So yeah, so my pick for documentary feature would be For Sama, and my prediction would also be For Sama, because I think it's an amazing film and I really recommend it as a film as well. Then we have animated feature film. Animated feature is an interesting one because I feel like last year I was really excited about a lot of the animated features, and I think we were all quite shocked that Frozen 2 wasn't on this list, because, you know, we all loved it. But yeah, I'm quite shocked at some of the films that have been nominated on this list. So we have How to Train Your Dragon, Hidden Worlds, I Lost My Body, Klaus, Missing Link, and Toy Story 4. And Klaus and I Lost My Body are both Netflix features, I don't think I've seen Klaus as having a theatrical release. I think I Lost My Body had like a 1 week run in one of the indie cinemas here, maybe not even that. I feel like it was just showing over a weekend. And then How to Train Your Dragon Hidden World was obviously like #1 in the box office the week it came out. I'm not very into the How to Train Your Dragon films. I haven't seen any of them in the cinema, but I did watch this one, and I was watching it going, why has this been nominated for an Oscar? I don't understand. Like, I don't think it was doing anything revolutionary. It really couldn't keep my attention, so I'm not sure how it would keep the attention of any of the children that went to see it in the cinema, unless they're a massive fan of the franchise. I can see if they're a big fan of the franchise, it would be exciting, probably. But yeah, I was really disappointed in this one. I thought I was going to like it. I really didn't. There's a reason I chose not to see it in the cinema, clearly. I Lost My Body was interesting. I enjoyed it more than How to Train Your Dragon, but it was very disjointed. I feel like if it had a better flow to it, it could have been amazing. I like the animation style. I like the story. The one that I saw on Netflix was like a dubbed version rather than a subtitled version, because it's set in and around France, I want to say. I think it's France and not Canada. But the story is interesting, and the relationship that develops over the course of the film is interesting. It is based on a book, and so I might seek out the book and see if that gives me any better clue as to what the kind of beginning and ending was supposed to be about, because we have this like disembodied hand, like in Adam's Family, and it is searching for his body, and I think that the body is supposed to be one of the people that we're watching in the film, but it wasn't 100% clear. There were moments of really good things in this film, but like overall it was a bit like, I don't know what happened there really. Then Klaus, I suppose it's Klaus because it's like Santa Claus. Again, I went into this film thinking, oh, I'm going to really enjoy this. Like, I was really pleased when I saw that it'd been nominated for an Oscar, because I didn't get to actually watch it at Christmas. I was like, great, this gives me an excuse to watch it. And it's one of the first that I kind of went to after the nominations were announced, that I hadn't seen, that I knew I had access to quickly on Netflix. And it's very dark. It's very, very dark and quite unpleasant. And, you know, the fact that they have a bell in the town that they ring when they want to start a fight, like, that's not very nice. It's not a good message to have for people. Like, there are some positive messages about it, but overall, I really didn't like it. I didn't like the animation style. I didn't like the darkness of it. I didn't like the storyline. And I really struggled to find anything positive about it, really. I think, you know, part of the positivity is that we have this person who initially at the start of the film is really too lazy to be bothered to try, and then we see him start to try and actually start to work hard. But yeah, not a good pick for me. So then we have Missing Link and Toy Story 4, both of which I really, really enjoyed, and both of which I would be happy if they won. Obviously, Missing Link did not get good reviews from critics. It got a good review from me. I really enjoyed watching it. I considered going to see it again. I thought that it had a good message of acceptance and kind of body positivity to it. And it had a lot of big voices in it as well. It was interesting watching it and listening and hearing who the different voices of the different characters were. Obviously, it won the Golden Globe, and that's always a good indication for the Oscars. But then, you know, Taron Egerton won a Golden Globe for Best Actor, and his film isn't even nominated, and he's not nominated for an acting award here, so let's not get into that. So many categories where Rocketman should have been nominated, and I'm sure they were longlisted, but yes. And then we have Toy Story 4. It's part of the Toy Story franchise. It's Pixar. You know, for me, this is my pick. And I'm also kind of tentatively saying that this is my prediction. Even though Missing Link won the Golden Globe, I think that because of the Pixar attachment, Toy Story could win the Oscar. I will leave my review of Toy Story linked up here in case you haven't seen it. I just did not have a chance to go and see this in the cinemas again, otherwise I would have done. I think I was travelling and it just didn't happen, but I would have liked to have seen it again. And yeah, I don't think it's on Disney Plus yet. Although it's been a while since it was released, I should go and have a look at that. I have a chance to watch it again before the Oscars tonight. But yeah, Toy Story 4 would be my prediction and my pick. And then finally, we have the Best Picture nominees. Obviously, you should know them all by now. I've been rewatching them all this week and last week. We have Ford vs Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. So the only ones, obviously, I didn't see in the cinema are The Irishman and Marriage Story. And then the only other one I haven't rewatched is they're the ones that I haven't rewatched, sorry. So Ford vs Ferrari, I absolutely loved. When I saw it the first time, I saw it in Dolby the first time and saw it in a regular screen the second time, and it really stands up to the regular screen as much as it does the Dolby screen. Obviously, you get that bigger screen experience and that more intense sound experience in the Dolby screen. But for me, I just really love this film. I think it's really good. It's got edge of your seat tension, it's got humour, it's got heart, and it's got, you know, some actual, you know, it's based on facts. It's a biopic, and I love a biopic. And I think there's kind of something in there for everyone, and that's why it's been nominated for Best Picture. It should have picked up some acting nominations as well as, you know, your film editing and your sound editing, which it rightfully deserved nominees for. But yeah, this film gets a very solid 2 thumbs up from me, and I really enjoyed it. The Irishman, not so much. I'm not a fan of this film. I think it was a little bit unnecessary. It was unnecessarily long. Some parts of it had really good moments. Some parts of it had kind of like memories from like Goodfellas or The Godfather, and that I appreciated. I don't think I would have liked it as much as I did had I not recently watched all of those type of mobster Godfather-esque movies from having watched the IMDb Top 100. So I think if you're not into those films at all, then you won't like The Irishman. And the CGI in the film just really annoyed me, and it annoys me that it's been picked up for like hair and makeup and costume and stuff like that, because it does not deserve those nominations. It's just because it's got those names attached to it that it has received those nominations, in my opinion. Then Jojo Rabbit. Jojo Rabbit just kind of misses my sense of humour. I can see where it's going to be funny for some people, and I was in a cinema that was fairly full and was hearing people laugh at points, and so I can appreciate where the humour lies. For me, the big takeaway from this film is Scarlett Johansson, and she just did an amazing job, and I loved watching her on screen, and the way she takes her emotions and deals with them throughout the whole of her time in the film was really good. I thought that Sam Rockwell was really good and really funny. I don't know what Rebel Wilson was doing in this film, but this is one of those where it wasn't for me, but I could see where other people would find it funny. But this would not be my choice or my prediction in this category, unfortunately. Then we have Joker, which I thought was stunning and was much better than I expected it to be. I'm generally not a DC Comics fan, you know, I'm a big Marvel fan, but this film just did amazing things. I thought it was really well directed and really well edited. Joaquin Phoenix is obviously going to win the acting Oscar. The lengths that he went to and the way he seemed to push himself in this film. I thought it was a very kind of dark and disturbing film, but it has stuck with me a lot more than a lot of the other films on this list, and a lot of any of the other films who've been nominated at all in tonight's Oscars. It was very good, and if it won, it would win deservedly so. I mean, by the time you get to the best picture nominees, they're all pretty good films, but I would be cross if Irishman won. But generally, the rest of the films on this list, I'd be okay if they won, you know. Then we have Little Women, which, you know, has obviously been nominated in Best Picture category, but not in Best Director category, and not in kind of like production design and that kind of thing, which I thought was really something that stood out for me, especially on a rewatch. I could see some of the choices that had been made in a kind of directorial way, and the way things had been edited and the way things, you know, the cinematography had been done. And you really do pick up on that in a rewatch. I am rewatching it again before the Oscars, so as I'm filming this, I'm about to go and watch it again. But yeah, for me, I love the story of Little Women anyway. Like, I wanted to be Jo when I first saw the Winona Ryder film when I was younger. You know, she was the one that I identified with. Like, everybody has their, which Spice Girl are you, which Little Women are you? I've always been Jo, probably because I'm an only child. But I really enjoyed it. If we could have had, you know, Susan Sarandon and Christian Bale from the original film playing their parts, I just didn't gel with Timothée Chalamet as Laurie at all. Like, I know he delivers a stunning performance and he's very quirky in his performance, but for me that role is always Christian Bale, and I fell in love with Christian Bale whilst watching that film. This film, however, I fell in love with Florence Pugh and all the capes. Like, that was my big takeaway from this one. And just kind of watching her on screen again in this one, it was just the performance that she gave. That's why she's got the acting nomination. It was just very, very good. And you know, I would love if this film would win Best Picture. It's probably not going to, but I would enjoy it if it did, because I really love the story. Then we have Marriage Story, which again, I feel very kind of strongly about. I was really worried going into it that it was going to be a downer, and kind of put off watching it for a little bit because I was like, oh, I need to be in a happy place to watch this, because it's just about these people whose marriage is falling apart. But actually, it's handled really well. The writing is incredible in the fact that it's not just a downer film. It has a lot of heart in there. There are high moments, there are low moments, there are just moments of pure beauty. Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson on screen together, their chemistry is fantastic. And I just loved what they did with their performances. Don't know why Laura Dern's been nominated for a Best Supporting Actress nomination. But then I could go down that hole again, which I talked about in my acting nominations video. It's fine, I've mentioned it before. But yeah, this was a really surprisingly beautiful film for me, and not what I was expecting. And so I think, you know, this would benefit from a rewatch, and I just haven't had time to rewatch it again because it's a long one as well. Most of these films are really long. And then 1917, I thought really benefited from a rewatch. It is beautifully shot, and I think he definitely deserves the Best Director nomination and hopefully the win. I'm really surprised that we didn't get an acting nomination out of this one, because again, on rewatch, like, wow, that performance is really impressive. I love the single camera shot. It makes it really intense, and even though this is a film that takes place in the trenches in World War I, it's not a war film, and I love that about it, because I don't like a war film. I like the fact that I can go in there and watch this, even though it's marketed as a war film. It's not. I can go in there and watch it and be like, oh yeah, this film has heart. This is about this guy's journey and the intensity of that journey and the things he has to face because it's a time of war and because he's a soldier in a time of war in a battlefield. Yeah, I just really liked it, and I would happily watch it again. Even though I've already watched it twice, I would happily watch this one again. And again, if this one won, I would be absolutely fine with that. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I am about to go and rewatch as of filming this. And it's a Tarantino film, which I'm not normally a fan of his work. I thought it was better than a lot of his other films. And I thought that for a Tarantino film, it doesn't contain a whole lot of violence until the very end, which is really good. I thought that Brad Pitt does an amazing job, and again, I like the fact that it's based on a moment in history, but we kind of take it and rewrite history to some extent. I really like what they did with that. And in terms of an original screenplay, again, if that picked up the award for screenplay, I would be happy with that, because I like what they've done with, it could have just been a straight, almost like biopic, but they took it and did something different with it. A bit like Little Women, where they've taken that, you know, well-known story and done something different with it. We've taken what's going on with Sharon Tate and we've done something different with it here. It's too long. It's definitely too long. We could shave off 40 minutes, make it a 2-hour film. But aside from that, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it more than I expected to. And for a Tarantino film, it's not that bad. But yeah, it definitely wouldn't be my pick, but I can see why it's been nominated. And then we have Parasite, which is obviously like the first South Korean film to have been nominated in this category, so it's groundbreaking in that sense. It watches like a nice twisty thriller novel, which is great, and you find yourself rooting for these people who are essentially con men, but it's that kind of lovable rogue nature about it, and the kind of rooting for the underdog nature, and you're like, you know, these people are just trying to get by on what very little they have, and they're resorting to whatever means necessary, and it kind of says a lot about the socioeconomic divide even in other countries. And yeah, again, I thought it was really nicely shot. I thought the writing and the script was really good, the direction was really good. I wouldn't pick it as a Best Picture nominee for me, but you know, if it won, then I can see there are definitely reasons why it would have won. So yeah, so for me, my personal like favorite on the list that I enjoyed watching and would watch again and again and again is Little Women. I love the story, I love the new stuff that they've done with the story, I love the directing choices that were made, I love the performances from like Saoirse Ronan and Florence Pugh, not necessarily anyone else. But yeah, I really liked that one. My kind of second favorite for me on the list is probably Ford versus Ferrari. I don't know if, you know, it's kind of between Joker and 1917 for which one will win. I guess my prediction would probably be 1917, but my choice would definitely be Little Women, because I just really like that film. It's a really difficult one, but like I say, any film on there, if it actually won, I would be like, yeah, that was well deserved, apart from The Irishman, because that wasn't. That's just where we have these Oscar darlings, so many Oscar names attached to it, and it's trying to be The Godfather, and it's not, so it needs to go away already. Like, yeah, that's how I feel about that film. So yeah, like I say, it's been a long one. I'm just about finished my cup of coffee. I don't know about you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments your picks and your favorites from these categories. If you've made it this far, I hope you have. Yeah, I will see you in the comments. Let's get into a bit of discussion here. Make sure you are subscribed so that my next non-Oscars week video lands in your subscription feed. I will be back with more regular movie reviews next Sunday. So I will see you then. Bye.